Hello and welcome back. My name is Angie Homley-Zabo, and today I'm going to talk with you about making a contour line shoe drawing that focuses on varied line quality. This is the first bigger, more time-consuming piece that my Intro to Drawing students make. We preface this project with a study of what line quality is, including varied line weight and line texture and implied line and what a contour line drawing is. We'll go over that as we draw this shoe as well. You are going to need a shoe or another object that you can observe carefully that you put in front of you. I don't want you to draw from a photograph. Drawing from a photograph is a lot easier. And not that I want to make your life harder than it already is or anything, but I do want to challenge you to draw from observation. This is a practice drawing, this is an exercise, and we want to stretch ourselves as artists because that's how we grow. So find an object, I want you to put it in front of you. Then you're going to need a sketchbook, and you're going to need a mechanical pencil to start, and eventually you're going to have graphite drawing pencils that I'd like you to work with. If you're one of my students, please don't use a Sharpie on this project, and please don't use your charcoal pencils. Stick with the graphite and start with either just a regular wooden 2B or 2H pencil, and then we'll move into the drawing pencils from there. You're going to need to be a careful observer of things, so take your time. If you get stressed or frustrated, that's normal and it's okay. Just take a deep breath, calm down, study your object, compare it to your drawing, and see what isn't working. See if you can problem solve a solution there. And if you really get stuck, talk to me, email me, talk to me in class, and just ask for help. I'm pretty good at finding solutions to things. I just need to know that you need that help. Take your time, work slowly through the process, and this is a video that's probably best to pause often as needed. So listen to me explain a section, pause it, do the thing, then start it again, pause it, do the next thing. So take your time working through this. I would not recommend watching this video in just one long session. Get ready to work, pause often, reflect back, review if you need to, and try to have some fun along the way, okay? To get started, I have to set up my space. So I have my shoe set up straight in front of me. I'm going to suggest that you have it straight, not straight on, but at an angle. Straight on's a little bit too easy, and we want to really shift that angle. It'll make a more interesting drawing. You wouldn't have to draw a shoe. That's what I have my students draw because it has enough variation in it to have some challenge to it and some interest, but it's also familiar enough to us that we are able to look at things rather easily. We'd go through the same process drawing from observation for any object or thing that we're drawing. I have my paper set up in front of me, and I also have a pencil and a pencil sharpener handy because we want to make sure that we keep our pencils sharp. The first thing we're going to do is kind of study our shoe. We're going to notice things about it. So I've got the camera set up at about the angle that I'm looking at my shoe, and I want to notice things like I can see inside the top of the shoe, I can see the outside of the shoe and the top at the same time. I'm noticing that the toe lifts up off the table some. It's not flat to the surface. The heel is flat down there. Take a few minutes to notice that kind of thing about your shoe as well. A lot of times my students want to draw the sole flat all the way across, touching the surface. And in reality, a lot of times the shoes on, or the soles on shoes lift up, both at the toe and oftentimes at the heel. So notice those kinds of things. The next thing we're going to do is set up the shoe on our page, and we want to draw what we're seeing when we draw from observation. So we're seeing a shoe that we're looking downward at about a 45-degree angle, so we can see both the top and the sides. So make sure when you start drawing the shoe, you're drawing what you see, and you're not drawing your shoe like this. Students and novice drawers tend to flip things from angles that are a little bit more difficult to angles that we're used to seeing things by. Make sure you're using your eyes to draw and not your brain. We're not drawing a shoe like this, and we're not drawing a shoe like this. We're drawing a shoe at an angle. So the first thing that I have students do is they're going to set up their pencil at the angle the shoe is, and then they're going to pull that pencil down to their paper. So my pencil defines the angle that I'm going to draw my shoe at. This is the bottom of my shoe. That helps me make sure I start it at the right angle instead of too flat. I'm also having my paper more horizontal or in a landscape orientation as opposed to a portrait or a tall orientation because my shoe is longer than it is tall and I want to draw this shoe big. So I'm going to take this angle and I'm just going to mark it with my pencil so I can start the basic drawing. The next thing I want to do is add the basic shapes or forms of my shoe. So if you've ever looked at a how to draw book, you'll notice like when you start drawing a horse that there's like a circle for the main part of the head and then a trapezoid for the snout and another trapezoid for its neck. And then slowly we break down those basic shapes into more complicated ones. And that's the same process that we do when we draw something from observation. So what we want to do is notice the basic shapes of the shoe as we look at it. So what I am noticing is the shoe for the length is flat. It comes up at the tip. There's a little bit of a circular kind of ovoid shape here. It comes up higher through here and then it dips down. Another thing you're going to want to think about is the proportions. So how big is this section of the shoe, the opening, compared to the front or the toe? So I can use my pencil to sight that in. I put the tip of my pencil at the opening and I put my thumb at the back, and then what I'll do is I'll compare that measurement to the points moving forward. And so the opening is a little less than 1/2 the total length of the front. So it's about 1/3 and a little more than 1/3, a little less than 2/3 here, and that's going to be important. Other things that I can measure in the same route would be like the height. So I could compare the height of the opening to the height of the central part of the shoe and notice what the height is in the front compared to the opening, and I can start to get a sense of proportions. Once I've got that kind of figured out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in to my page and I'm just going to very loosely and lightly draw in the basic shape or form of this shoe. I'm not adding any details at this point. I don't have very finessed forms. I just want to get the basic information in. I'm keeping my line loose and flowing, more gestural in nature than the finished outcome will be. So I'm going to double check my proportions at this point. Okay, so I said that this opening is about 1/3 compared to 2/3 in the front, and every shoe is different, so you're going to have to check this on yours. So I'm going to check that. I'm doing pretty good there. Probably should get this lower based on that. So I'll bring that down. And I just started to do what I always tell my students not to do. Don't erase at this point. We don't erase because we want to keep the line that's wrong. It's our comparison. If I erase, I'm going to keep drawing the same wrong thing over and over and over again. And at the time of making this video, a number of my students are working on these from home. Usually in class, I can see if somebody's working with an eraser and I'll say, you know, stop, don't do it. Because you want to see those marks that show you like, hey, this is not quite right. And they help us to discover what the correct marks are. Now what I'm going to do, I double checked my proportions. I'm feeling pretty good about them. Now I'm going to start to come in and I'm just going to finesse my line a little bit more accurately. So the sole, there's a little more movement. It's not perfectly flat or straight. So I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to lift the toe a little bit. The toe doesn't look quite so flat. If I have a lot of lines that are wrong, I will sometimes erase them just because it can get a little confusing. So I want to lift that toe up here so there's more of a rounded nature and then it dips down. I'm going to kind of pay attention to this edge here. And if you were watching my eyes right now while I was drawing, what you would notice is that my eyes are going to be looking up, down, up, down. So I'm always comparing what's here to what's on my shoe. So a constant back and forth with my eyes, just to see if what I'm doing matches up with what's in front of me. What you don't want to do is spend most of your time looking at your paper. Now you can see that I'm starting to work in some more of the details of the shoe. And again, lots and lots of comparisons with my eyes. And I for sure have things that aren't going to be quite right that I'm going to have to fix. Like I think I need a little bit more toe on the shoe and a little less of this up here. You know, those little things get fixed over time. But I'm just trying to get in. Now I've got the basic overall shape, the big shape. Now I'm going to start to work in some of the smaller details. Yeah, they're not even details. I'm working in smaller forms at this point. I'm not going to worry about stitches. I'm not going to worry about getting like the exact sole of the shoe in. I'm just worrying about getting those basic shapes and having them interact in the correct way for what I'm looking at, for what I actually see. So I've got the tongue of my shoe here. I rounded it more than it is, so I'm going to loosen that up a little bit. And then on my shoe, if we look at it again, I have all these lovely straps I get to draw. So I'm going to start to build those into the piece as well. And I'm just going to keep building in those structures. I'm going to keep drawing loose and I'm going to keep drawing light. I'm not trying to have a perfect finished drawing at this point. All right, I've got my basic structures on my shoe at this point. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to make some comparisons from one object on the shoe to other spaces on the shoe. So I'm trying to make some proportion comparisons. So I'm going to look at places like this. I'm going to look at the tip of this strap and how it compares to this part of the sole. And if you look, they kind of line up. They overlap just a little bit here. And if I look at my drawing, what I'll notice is they overlap completely. That tells me I either need to move this back and up or I need to move this forward. I'm going to move this forward because I think that the toe in general might be a tad short, and I know I don't have extra room here to move. So I'm going to move this down and forward and try to match that comparison. And then I will compare it to these types of lines through here as those two spaces intersect, and I will make shifts as needed in that space. And I think I need to bring this line up and in. Basic structure of the shoe worked in, and I would start to go in and kind of clean things up and then start to add more of the major details. So I would be adding things like the grommets that come down each of these straps. I would add the buckles. I would start to add things like the tags, some of the structures within these parts of the shoe. But before I do that, I'm going to step away for a few minutes and come back to this drawing with fresh eyes. I'm pretty sure I still need to add a little bit to the toe of my shoe here. It's still looking too short in comparison to the rest of the shoe, and sometimes coming in with a fresh set of eyes can help me with that. So I'm going to step away for 5-10 minutes, go grab a drink of water, come back, and I'm going to shift this down most likely and just take another careful look at everything and kind of rework and finalize these major shapes. So we go from the very, very basic form, basic outline, to the major subforms in the piece. Now we're going to start working on major details, then minor details, and then we start working on the line work and really making this into its final version. everything basically where it belongs. There's little tweaks to do. I've kept my line nice and loose and light. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to lighten up all my lines everywhere so they're barely perceptible, so I can go back in and draw them, redraw them with purpose and precision.